All right, so for today's notes, we're continuing with Japan origins. So last time we were working on Japan origins, and we talked about the creation of Japan, and we talked about who the first emperor of Japan was, how that was Jemmu, and he had these three treasures: a mirror, a special sword, and a jewel that he said proved that he was a descendant of the gods. So we got to talk about when Jemmu gained control of Japan, which was about in 660 before Common Era. All right, go ahead and make a new bullet and write down battles with the Ainu. So new bullet, battles with the Ainu. So what happens is that Jemmu, he gained control of Japan in about 660 before Common Era. And he kind of pushed out another group of people that were already living in Japan. You see, the Japanese are actually not indigenous to Japan. They're not originally from there. They kind of came from north of Mongolia area, or kind of from the Mongolia area. And then they came over to Japan, and then they pushed out the Ainu who were already living in Japan to kind of the more northern parts of modern day Japan. Go ahead and make a 1 and write down Jemmu gained control of Japan about 660 before Common Era. So 1, Jemmu gained control of Japan about 660 before Common Era. And when Jemmu took over the islands of Japan, he took them over from a group called the Ainu. And so he took them over from a group called the Ainu. Now, I knew they looked different than the present day people of Japan. They were tall, kind of white skinned, white eyed, and had large amounts of body hair. And Jemmu defeated these people that he called hairy barbarians. So that's what he kind of called them. And eventually, as I said, he defeated them and pushed them out of the area. The Ainu, they're the ones that originally lived in Japan. So they're people that originally lived in Japan. I go ahead and make a 2, write down Ainu, and then make an equal sign. So 2 Ainu, equal sign. And then we're going to write down originally lived in Japan. So we got 2 Ainu equal sign originally lived in Japan. So as I said, the Ainu, they originally lived in Japan. And they're kind of a bear worshiping religion. So they kind of worship bears. And most of them live in the northern island of Hokkaido. So that's kind of where they live. And there's only really about 2,000 nowadays that kind of live in the area. So there's not very many of this group of people left. And they're kind of this bear worshiping religion. I don't really remember kind of much about the religion. I do remember that like if an animal like killed a person, they kind of believe that it got possessed by like an evil spirit and so forth. They did believe that. I know they definitely sacrificed bears. So I know they had a lot of belief about that. They were tattooed lips when they were married. So remember a couple things about them. So Jemmu we're pretty sure is a real person. And the mythological beginnings of Japan is kind of a story that's kind of told about Japan. However, the relationship of the emperors to the gods was renounced by Emperor Hirohito when after World War II. So after World War II is when the emperor of Japan, so the emperors of Japan were like, no, we're not actually related to the gods. So they did kind of say that after World War II ended. The current emperor of Japan is Naruhito. He's the current emperor of Japan. So go ahead and make a bullet and write down Naruhito. And as you make bullet Naruhito, make a 1 and write down 126th emperor of Japan. So bullet Naruhito and then 126th emperor of Japan. So Naruhito, he's the 126th emperor of Japan. So there have been 126 emperors since Jemmu. And as I said before, every single emperor of Japan can trace their descent back to the very first emperor of Japan, Jemmu. So they did a pretty good job of keeping track of bloodlines. And as I said, this is Naruhito. You can see him there in the picture. So the clan name, the Emperor clan does have a name, and that's called Yamamoto. So the Emperor's clan name is Yamamoto. So that's the name of it. And nowadays, the emperor doesn't really have a lot of political power. Nowadays, the government in Japan is a democracy. You vote for people and so forth. And the emperor is kind of more or less a figurehead. You know, there's an emperor around, but he doesn't really have any political power, or have much, I should say. All right, let's make a bullet and write down the word Shinto. So bullet and write down the word Shinto. And I think next time we'll talk about Shinto. Okay, let's go ahead and stop there.